So let's work the view first of the galaxy. Open up galaxy.html. Here, and at the bottom of the page you'll find a table with the ID table. We just need to add a binding to this, so let's go to the Oracle Jet Cookbook, and you'll see here a data binding attribute. Just copy this and paste it in here. I have another version of it. I've made some modifications to it. So the thing I did is the data. It's coming from the data source that we're going to define in our view model. I've changed the selection mode to row single. Our columns default is being changed to sortable enabled. These are the two column headings that we're going to use. And I've also defined a row template, and we're going to define that right now. So below it, create a script tag and close the script tag, and let's add some attributes to it. So it's type needs to be text HTML, and we also need to define the row template ID. So this template ID that we're using, row template, is being reused here. So we're going to create the template now. So in our table we need a TR. Let's close the TR. We have two column headings, so we want two TDs. That's the first one, and this one will be the second one. And we just need to add the bindings to it. So it's data bind, and we want to have text. That will be the ID. That's the first one. And for the second one, it will be also a data bind, and we also need to add text that we want to be the name. Okay, so let's save our file. That's all we need in the view. Let's switch to our view model now, and that will be the Galaxy.js. So the data source that we defined here, we need to define it in our view model now. So below the first to do, let's add that data source. So it's self.data source. This will be a knockout observable. Then we also need the service URL. So it will be service URL. And this will be coming from our config base URL, and we're going to concatenate it to our config.galaxy. Then the last thing we need is our collection. So it's self.collection, and this will be also a knockout observable. Okay, then we need to have a basic authentication. We already have the bearer from the previous steps, so we don't need much. So in our my basic auth function, let's add a variable called headers, assign it to an empty object, and this header will have a key called authorization, and it will be coming from our config bearer. We can just reuse it from before, and let's return our header. Now we need to parse the galaxies, so this will return an object containing two fields. So the ID, that's coming from the response, that is the ID, and we also want to have the name, so this will be also coming from the response name. Then we need to extend the collection, that's this one. Don't worry, after I've shown you all the code, I'll explain everything step by step. So let's add the URL. This will be coming from our service URL. Service URL. Then we need to extend the model. So this is a new OJ model.extend, and we have two attributes here. So it's the ID attribute. Let's call it ID, and we also have the parse function that we just wrote, but don't include the brackets. We don't need those, otherwise it will call the function instantly. We don't need that at the moment. And we also need our OAuth, and this will be new self my basic auth, and here you need to have the brackets. Now we need to call our collection and data source, so it's self collection, and we need to pass in the argument new collection, and below it we also need to create a data source, and here we'll say new OJ dot collection table data source, and we need to give in the collection, and don't forget the semicolon here. Save. So let me explain what's happening. The Oracle Jet Common Model and Collection API provides a collection of records object model that includes classes bringing external data into an Oracle Jet application and mapping that data to the application's view model. So the OJ model represents a single record from a data service, such as a RESTful web service. That's what we're using with ORDS. And the OJ collection represents a set of data records and is a list of OJ model objects of the same type. So that's why we're also extending the model here. So save everything, the view and the view model, and let's go back to our page, and you should see a table that's being populated. So refresh the page, and everything looks okay. So at the top of the page you see these three buttons, but there's no label to it yet and no styling, so let's fix that. So let's go back to our view of the galaxy, and you should see three buttons at the top of the table. So that's this one. These are the three buttons that we're seeing here. So what we need to do there is just add data binding attributes. So let's do the first one. Let's make some working space first. So it's data bind, and let's add a click event to it. So click, when we click in it, it should do the handle new function. Then the component that this button will be, it's also being defined in the data binding. So its component will be an OJ button. Then we also need to define the label, and the label will be coming from our translation, so it will be OJ dot translations dot get translated string, and this will be galaxies dot new, and that's it for the first button. So you can just copy this binding and reuse it for the button below, like so, and you can also do that for this one. So when we click the edit button, it should go to another function, and the function that we have for this is, let me see, it was current selection, and for the delete one we have another function and it's called delete current selection. So we also need to change our two translatable strings. So the first one is galaxies dot edit and the second one is galaxies dot delete. So everything stays the same for the button, so it's still a button from the Oracle Jet components. We've just changed the titles, the labels, and we changed the click events for every one of them. So save it, go back to the page, and you should see 3 buttons. When you click it, nothing happens yet because the functions in the view models are still empty. But don't worry, we'll add the logic for each and every button in the next videos.